June 4th, 2023, 4:14 a.m., the USS Chung-hoon, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, slid through the waters of the Taiwan Strait on a routine freedom of navigation patrol alongside the Canadian frigate HMCS Montreal. A calm dawn draped the sea in stillness, but tension simmered beneath the surface. Then, without warning, the radar lit up. A Chinese Type 05 2D Luoyang 3 destroyer closing swiftly on the port bow. In those seconds, distance shrank. 500 yards, 300, 150. Quiet warning tones echoed in the Combat Information Center. The commanding officer's voice held steady. Luoyang, 3 crossing port bow. Unsafe. Maintain course. Chung-hoon eased to 10 knots, engines humming tightly. The Chinese destroyer executed a razor-sharp crossover at 150 yards, just 137 meters, inside the margin of safe international navigation. The two ships passed in near silence, each aware of the dangerous proximity. Then, just moments later, the Chinese vessel repeated the maneuver, this time at around 2,000 yards, calm, deliberate, and undeniably assertive. Aerial and onboard cameras recorded every ping, every glance. Fingers hovered over CIWS triggers, missile silos primed. No aggressive action occurred. Still, the moment felt like a diplomatic standoff at sea. What began as a routine passage had transformed into a powerful message: presence, precision, and steel. And the crew of Chung-hoon realized they were not merely executing a patrol, they were bearing witness to modern naval brinkmanship. At precisely 4:14 a.m. on June 4th, 2023, the USS Chung-hoon, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, was executing a standard freedom of navigation patrol through the Taiwan Strait. Flanked by the Canadian frigate HMCS Montreal, the Chung-hoon steamed in calm seas under a pre-dawn sky. The ship's SPY-1D phased array radar hummed continuously, scanning the maritime expanse for anomalies. The bridge crew operated with routine vigilance until a sharp ping disrupted the quiet hum. A fast-moving radar blip approached from the port bow. The tactical action officer summoned the Combat Information Center. Brief bursts of echo data indicated a Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy plan. Type 05 2D Luoyang 3 destroyer, hull number 132, on an interception course. The radar tracked the closing vessel 500 yards, 400 yards, 300 yards. Within seconds, the commanding officer issued a terse warning. Luoyang, 3 crossing port bow, unsafe. Maintain course. The Chung-hoon slowed to 10 knots. Engines thrummed under load. The maneuver by the Chinese warship breached established international rules of the road, a set of navigational conventions meant to prevent exactly this. The bridge officers exchanged curt lines. All stop, then a shift to minimal forward speed. The Chinese destroyer cut across the bow at just 150 yards, approximately 137 meters, before pulling away. The two warships crossed with dangerously reduced separation. The bridge became silent, engine noise resonating through the decks as crew held position. Below decks, CIC officers logged the event. Screens flashed red. Personnel monitored missile silo launch readiness, CIWS lock-on procedures, and electronic warfare systems, primed but not engaged. On deck, sailors of the 5-inch gun crew straightened their stance, keeping fingers clear of triggers. A tense pause enveloped the ship. The Chinese destroyer didn't fire, yet the moment carried the weight of intent. It was a deliberate display of maritime muscle, escalating tension without violence. Moments later, the Type 05 2D executed a second pass, this time at a more distant 2,000 yards, crossing ahead before slowly moving off. The CIC and bridge cameras captured every movement and angle. The on-deck watch crews remained alert. Hands hovered near control consoles. No alarms were sounded, yet the urgency was palpable. The narrow miss left an undercurrent of anxiety. It became clear to all that their routine patrol had turned into a geopolitical tightrope walk. Bridge log entries reflected the severity. Unsafe overtaking crossing, minimum separation 150 yards, no damage. Transit continued. The commanding officer radioed Indopacom and Fifth Fleet via encrypted channels, briefing them on an unsafe close pass by foreign warship. The Monroe Doctrine in modern disguise, not firepower, but proximity. With the Chinese destroyer fading into the eastern horizon, the Changhoon regained its full operational speed. But a profound shift had occurred. The encounter wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculated act of brinkmanship, a challenge cast in water and steel. The crew's posture remained tense, eyes scanning the sea. The bridge transmitted a final line: maintain formation, increase watch rotations, expect electronic intercepts. The shadow of that 150-yard crossing lingered long after the warship disappeared. In that moment, routine patrol became a frontline test. Not a missile strike, not a drone swarm, just ships, nerves, and the silent threat of escalation. In the minutes following the second close pass, tension aboard the USS Changhoon morphed into calculated action. At 04:16, just 2 minutes after the 150-yard maneuver, the bridge ordered weapon systems to heightened alert. The phased array SPY-1 radar tracked the Chinese destroyer maintaining a parallel course approximately 2,000 yards away. The Combat Information Center, CIC, began a layered readiness sequence. Missile silos opened to readiness. The Aegis system was set to weapons hold, and CIWS lock-on routines entered standby mode. CIC officers initiated electronic surveillance protocols. Communication stations scanned for encrypted radio chatter. Sensors parsed PLAN frequency bands for jamming attempts. No electronic interference detected yet, but gapless situational awareness was critical. The air was thick with anticipation. Engines and radar pulses echoed through the deckhouse. On deck, sailors braced at the 5-inch Mark 45 gun mount, their hands steady, but their eyes steely, ready for orders that never came. At 04:18, Chinese radio chatter was intercepted. Hull number LY-132 communicated in Mandarin via short-burst transmissions, likely tactical data sharing with other plan units nearby. The CIC fed the intercept to naval intelligence. It confirmed that this was not isolated posturing, but a coordinated harassment exercise. The tactical officer briefed the captain. Hostile tracking data and voice comms confirm coordinated plan actions targeted at disrupting transit operations. The captain responded crisply: maintain non-provocative posture, continue transit document actions. Meanwhile, the Liu Yang-class destroyer LY-132 made another wide pass, drifting within 2,000 yards portside. The CIC recorded imagery, radar data, and timeline, preparing evidence for reporting to Indopacom and Fifth Fleet. Meanwhile, the HMCS Montreal relayed infrared camera footage and radar tracking plots to the Changhoon, enhancing shared situational awareness, a testament to Allied interoperability amid maritime tension. Electronic warfare operators remained on alert. Although no active jamming was apparent, analysts' new plan doctrine favored electromagnetic suppression. The Changhoon ramped up passive EM shielding and sensor noise detection protocols in anticipation of possible aggression. No electronic pulses were detected this time, but the readiness loop had begun. At 04:20, the Chinese destroyer altered course slightly, increasing speed. Radar showed it climbing to flank speed and drifting into a parallel position off Changhoon's stern. CIC operators flagged a potential follow-on. The captain issued new orders: continue transit at current range, maintain defensive posture. No changes to international law or rules of the road were being made, but the psychological stakes were rising. On deck, sailors rotated watch shifts under red lighting. Each radar blip, engine cough, or radio tone was logged. It was still an exercise in restraint. No missiles fired, no CIWS engaged, but silence carried as much threat as weapon fire. By 4:24, the Chinese ship began to gradually slow and move away, its mission of intimidation apparently complete. The USS Changhoon resumed full speed, yet the CIC continued recording every signature: radar, audio, imagery, knowing that this encounter would soon be scrutinized in global naval intelligence circles. Because establishing dominance in modern maritime contest does not always rely on missiles. Sometimes it comes from the variables layered inside silence, radar whispers, and unspoken response. By 04:26, 12 minutes after the initial unsafe crossing, the USS Changhoon had shifted its posture from tactical restraint to strategic alertness. Deck lights were dimmed. Only red lighting illuminated critical areas. The bridge crew adjusted sonar and radar sweep patterns, prioritizing the Chinese Type 05 2D Luoyang 3's active transits and any other planned vessels approaching. Below decks, the CIC archived encrypted radio bursts and radar tracks. Documentation was meticulous. Images, timings, vessel behaviors, and course alterations would be compiled to form an unassailable timeline. On deck, sailors remained on heightened alert. The 5-inch Mark 45 gun crew stood ready, though they maintained strict weapon safeties. The CIWS was tracking potential targets just in case orders came. Electronic warfare specialists scanned for electromagnetic jamming or infrared suppression signatures. None yet. Meanwhile, the Canadian frigate HMCS Montreal maintained a parallel course, leveraging its infrared and low-light cameras to augment the Chung-Hoon's coverage and provide Allied situational awareness. The Type 05 2D continued shadowing at a safe but proximal distance, approximately 2 nautical miles, while plan radio chatter resurfaced. The CIC captured snippets in Mandarin that suggested coordination with additional PLA units in the area. Analysts speculated this was part of a broader demonstration of naval capacity and readiness. The captain, intent on avoiding escalation, yet determined to assert lawful navigation rights, ordered the ship to maintain speed and heading, logging each Chinese maneuver. At 4:30, a new layer of tension emerged. A short-range radar acoustic signature flashed, likely from a fast patrol craft or corvette fast approaching from the northwest. The CIC flagged this as an escalation. The bridge crew was pulled. Confirm continue transit. Engage passive sensors. The captain emphasized calm vigilance. Yes, maintain. No provocative moves. Record everything. Electronic warfare officers responded by activating passive infrared shielding, masking submarine detection emissions. Naval diplomacy was unfolding at high velocity. The tension had shifted. Long-range displays of force gave way to precision navigation and international law enforcement. Outside, small craft passed visually, but none closed on a collision course. The Chinese destroyer neither slowed nor impeded further. It maintained position, as if marking U.S. resolve with constant presence, not aggression. CIC logged every signature, Aegis lock cycles, weapons hold status, plan radio patterns. The bridge maintained a calm, clipped tone on internal comms. The observers from Montreal exchanged encrypted data streams with Chung-Hoon, reinforcing Allied unity in contested waters. Mirage-like waves rippled across both decks, reflecting the radar dishes overhead. As naval platforms from both fleets continued the transit, strategic co-location became the message. Proximity underscored defiance in support of freedom of navigation, but restraint kept escalation marginal. The clash had moved from kinetic brinkmanship to a silent game of legality and persistence. Both ships remained locked in formation, yet controlled. The moment passed without fire, but the signals were clear. Proximity had spoken. By 0435, radar scope showed the Type 05 2D begin a slow withdrawal, its intent signal complete. CIC noted, plan harassment pattern recorded, no aggressive escalation, return to baseline. The crew exhaled, only slightly. This was not over. The captain called a standing order, maintain high watch, prepare for further contact, log debrief materials. The Taiwan Strait transit would continue, but no sailor would soon forget how silence, presence, and adherence to rules can become the most potent weapon of modern naval warfare. By 0436 a.m., nearly 40 minutes into the Taiwan Strait transit, the bridge of the USS Chung-Hoon switched from reactive alertness to methodical control. The Chinese Type 05 2D destroyer had repeatedly shadowed the U.S. vessel, once at a perilously close 150 yards, then trailing at around 2,000 yards, demonstrating maritime assertiveness under international scrutiny. The question hovering in every sailor's mind was clear. What comes next? On the command deck, the captain convened at the plot table, coordinating with HMCS Montreal via a secure link to compare radar logs and deck camera uploads. This unified electronic picture ensured Allied situational awareness was synchronized. Inside the CIC, communications instructed tracking each maneuver, positions, headings, time-stamped radar tracks, all meticulously logged to build an impenetrable timeline for Central Command. At 0438, the U.S. team noted that the Chinese destroyer maintained parallel positioning. The team activated the Aegis system to a weapons-ready hold, maneuvered CIWS into continuous lock-on mode, and tightened the rules under which engagement could be authorized. Still no shots fired, but all paths were covered. Meanwhile, electronic warfare specialists increased passive EM shielding and refined radar filters in anticipation of possible jamming attempts. A spike on the radar appeared at 0440. A fast patrol craft, possibly from China's Eastern Theater Command, was closing from the northwest. The CIC flagged the contact. The bridge steadied. Maintain transit speed. Non-provocative posture. Log and transmit notice. USS Chung-hoon, transiting under lawful rights. Please maintain safe distance. This statement was broadcast to the PLA vessel designed to assert navigation rights without escalating the situation. The Type 05-2D responded with a brief Mandarin communication, cordial, not aggressive. Observers on deck noted the tone of voice matched non-threatening engagement. The command teams aboard Chung-hoon and Montreal exchanged encrypted acknowledgments. Navigation continues. No alteration, of course. As the minutes passed, the Allied vessels resumed standard tracking. Sonar sweeps rotated through forthcoming watch shifts, electronic logs updated in real time, and a quiet readiness settled across each deck. The atmosphere remained one of prepared professionalism, fully capable yet deliberately restrained. By 4:45, the fast craft had disappeared from the radar. The Chinese destroyer abandoned parallel tracking and returned to regional patrol routines. CIC entries confirmed, potential threats cleared. Transit proceeding under standard conditions. Despite this, every sailor stayed sharp. Names were recorded into logs, weapons remained at ready hold, and deck teams rotated watch shifts in low red light. No celebrations erupted. This was not victory. It was successful containment. Diplomatic navigation through perilous waters had been executed without a shot fired. As the Chung-hoon and her allies pressed onward, the crew understood the gravity of their restraint. In modern naval warfare, command and communication can stand stronger than missiles. Discipline, unity, and lawful posture became the weapons of choice. By 4:47 a.m., the confrontation in the Taiwan Strait had abated, but the USS Chung-hoon remained on full alert. The Chinese Type 05-2D destroyer had resumed its patrol course to the east. Yet the strategic implications lingered in every corner of the ship. Intelligence teams deployed an initial sweep of the Combat Information Center, and evidence logs began to accumulate. Video clips from bridge and CIC cameras were tagged with timestamps. Radar tracks were archived. Radio communications, hostile broadcasts, and exchanges were downloaded for linguistic and tactical analysis. On deck, sailors removed spent training rounds from CIWS magazines and performed maintenance checks. The 5-inch gun crew reviewed their weapon logs, cleaning barrels, and ensuring each shell's serial number matched the umpteen rounds unexpended. Passive sonar and EM systems were maintained in standby mode. Any missed pulse could signal another escalation. Meanwhile, damage control teams evaluated the ship's integrity. Though no contact struck target, adrenaline's aftermath brought sweat-soaked uniforms, an intense review of every serviceable system. Below decks, the intelligence section prepared a preliminary full incident report. The timeline encompassed the initial 150-yard crossing at 4:14 a.m., the parallel tracking over the next 30 minutes, and the final withdrawal. Data cross-referenced Chinese naval movements recorded through satellite feeds and open-source imagery confirmed the Luoyang 3's departure from its Eastern Theater Command port. Linguists translated intercepted Mandarin bursts, possibly indicating radio discipline training or real-time mission coordination. In the briefing room, the commanding officer and executive officer reviewed the reconstructed sequence with senior staff. The focus wasn't only on what occurred, but why. This maneuver wasn't random. It followed a pattern of Chinese maritime assertiveness seen in previous incidents in the South China Sea and East China Sea. Naval strategists on board debated implications. Was this posturing tied to domestic policy or part of broader planned doctrine to challenge U.S. naval presence? The Chinese action drew attention precisely because it used proximity instead of missiles, an escalation without fireworks. Up on deck, the HMCS Montreal joined the Chung-hoon in formation, Canadian officers relayed their video and radar archives into the shared evidence bundle. Allied interoperability had been tested and proven. A message from 5th Fleet HQ arrived. Transmit all data to Indopacom AIIS's section. Initiate follow-up patrol in next 48 hours. The task force was already preparing for renewed monitoring. The Chung-hoon adjusted course slightly, signaling readiness for continuing freedom of navigation operations through contested waters. By 0455, the tactical action officer cleared weapon systems to stand by. The ship powered down non-essential combat systems, allowing the crew to shift from red alert to sustained readiness. Briefing notes circulated, used proximity documentation and allied coordination as strategic deterrence tools. The crew debriefed. Lessons learned: maintain situational awareness, abide by rules of engagement, record everything. This would be a blueprint for future patrols. As the Chung-hoon resumed normal speed, the bridge reflected on the incident's meaning. They had endured a naval encounter without crossing a line, no collision, no shots fired. The exercise of restraint and lawful posture had diffused a tightly wound scenario. But the message was clear: modern naval warfare isn't always about missiles or drone swarms. It can begin and end with silent displays of presence, layered sensor networks, and flawless tactical discipline. Navigating this new maritime landscape means watching radar pings as carefully as weapons locks, and remembering that sometimes power lies not in firepower, but in resolve. By 5:05 a.m., as the Taiwan Straits morning light strengthened, the USS Chung-hoon was winding down its operations but ramping up strategic discussions. The confrontation earlier had been contained without hostilities, but it left both tactical and geopolitical reverberations. On the command deck, the captain assembled key officers, CIO, XO, CIC Chief, EW Lead, for a debrief that would become a cornerstone of regional naval posture. The CIC replayed footage: the unsafe crossing at 150 yards, the shadowing passes, the concealed radio bursts. Each moment was cross-referenced with Allied HMCS Montreal data. Intelligence coders synchronized timestamps, camera angles, and radar logs into a layered incident dossier. Strategic analysts were already extracting trends: Chinese intent to assert presence without firing, U.S. determination to remain lawful, Canadian allies serving as effective corroborators. It was a ballet of naval diplomacy under the watch of modern coastal states. Deeper analysis focused on implications for carrier group operations. Could similar intercepts threaten a larger formation? The leadership discussed adapting rules of engagement, formalizing a defensive buffer zone of 500 yards, escalatory radio alerts, and immediate Allied broadcasts. A proposed SOP update would require combined response drills with the Canadian and Japanese escorts operating in concert. This encounter was shaping regional doctrine. Below decks, intelligence teams prepared a refined briefing for Indopacom, embedding location metadata, comment evidence, and navigational track overlays. Analysts cited the incursion as emblematic of China employing gray zone tactics, maneuvering under hostile intent in contested spaces without triggering open conflict. The Chung-hoon's performance became a case study. Discipline, patience, transparency, and evidence-first doctrine had upheld norms without escalation. Meanwhile, on deck, sailors performed final system checks. The 5-inch gun, CIWS, and EW arrays returned to non-alert status, but ammunition and sensors remained operational. Red light watch remained until relieved. Alliances matter. The cooperative transit with Canada had invested confidence in freedom of navigation patrols. The crew knew this was more than a regional test. It was a signpost in global naval posture. At 5:30 a.m., the crew fell in for muster. No medals were awarded, but the captain's briefing invoked discipline, composure, and resolve. He emphasized the crew had avoided violence while protecting rights. He stated the incident would inform future deployments. The message was clear: restraint can be as powerful as firepower. As the Chung-hoon continued toward its next waypoint, the ship's logs and incident dossier were already boarding a UAV drone to 5th Fleet Command. The Taiwan Strait Transit had become a strategic vignette, proof that in modern naval warfare, presence, patience, and procedural perfection often deter more than missiles. The crew learned that sometimes the loudest response is not a salvo, but a steady course and a clear conscience. As dawn fully broke, the USS Chung-hoon and HMCS Montreal pressed on through the strait without incident. No missiles were fired, no alarms blared, but a threat had been communicated and countered. What emerged was not confrontation, but a display of disciplined restraint and solidarity. China's calculated proximity test had sought to shape behavior through intimidation rather than weaponry. But the cohesive response from U.S. and Canadian vessels demonstrated a new doctrine, unity backed by unwavering adherence to international norms. In modern naval contests, power is measured not only by ordnance but by presence, preparation, and principle. This incident showed that a steady course, clear rules of engagement, and shared awareness can serve as the most potent deterrent. In the end, no shots were fired, no flags were lowered, but a message was sent. Freedom of navigation is not optional, it is defended. In the quiet clarity of sunrise, the Taiwan Strait taught its lesson. Sometimes the loudest voice is calm resolve.